Now, from the Signature Bank Studios.
If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. David Walsh is a former president and CEO of Mitsubishi Hitachi Power Systems Americas. And he is sounding the alarm, as are others with his expertise, about America's electrical grid. He said in an interview with Breitbart, we've got regional grid coordinators across the grids now impacted by grid operators telling us they're running out of electricity. We're not generating enough baseload constant duty electricity to support demand. States like California already import about a third of their electricity, and they're running into problems in Southern California. He goes on to say, a massive shortage of what's called baseload constant duty electricity power plants. That's what we have. These plants that run are ones that run all day long, 24/7, 365. Very high capacity factor, 92, 95% being displaced with stuff that operates, if solar, national average, 5 hours a day. Up to the north, about 4 hours a day. Wind on land is about 8 hours a day, but again, radically modifies day to day. Is about 75% variation in daily wind volume or speed for power generation. Unreliable, in other words. You've got a great shortfall there, great shortfall with solar displacing assets that run all the time, so you wind up with a systemic reduction of energy being produced by the electrical system. We've got grid operators around the country sounding alarm bells that in the next few years, they're not going to be able to meet demand with the amount of electricity being generated. Well, if we have a dearth of supply, then what will we see? Well, the only thing you could see, government rationing. Like healthcare. How's that going? For more on this and other matters economic, pleased to be joined by Christopher Whalen, investment banker, chairman of Whalen Global Advisors, author of Ford Men, From Inspiration to Enterprise, and editor for the Institutional Risk Analyst. Chris Whalen, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Dan. Good morning, Amy.
This is something that is starting to get more attention, particularly as Biden's EPA advances in a more draconian direction with respect to their monomaniacal focus on carbon emissions to the detriment of, powering a $25 trillion economy. And I suspect those who are substantial users of energy are well aware of the gathering storm.
Oh, yeah. Well, you see this in Europe. They've crippled their economy because of the headlong plunge to net zero. Instead of spending their time remediating the obvious warming of the globe, they want to try and reverse it. But the truth is that human activity contributes to global warming, but the globe is warming, and there's not a lot we can do about the natural change of things. I always like to remind my friends where we grew up in Maine, the beautiful lake country, we used to have a mile of ice above it 10,000 years ago. And it's going to keep warming. That's just the way it's going, and we have to adjust. That's no other way to put it. The electrical stuff, though, you were just getting into is wonderful. What a idiotic thing to do.
Well, right. I mean, so we talk about democracy in decline, our representative republic in decline, when people say that. And a lot of the discussion has been based on, lawfare, criminalizing political viewpoints, certain political viewpoints. But the representative republic also goes into decline, and it's also been discussed in terms of printing money and the debt that we're accumulating. But it also goes in decline if you can't power the economy. You can't power the world's largest economy. And it seems that we're intent on making sure that there's no possibility of the standard of living that so many of people have come to enjoy.
Oh, yeah. Base load electricity is kind of basic. You cannot do it with wind farms. Here in New York, the progressives want to erect many, many new windmills, and they will treble the cost of electricity in New York. Now, if this doesn't turn this into a Republican state, then I don't know what else to say to you. But New York City won't work. You cannot air condition those buildings if you're going to increase power costs like that. And then the other issue, of course, is that New York will become an importer of electricity because we don't have enough base load here. But you know what, Dan? The good news is, once we're done with this childish idiocy from the left, we're going to build a lot more nuclear reactors. That's the reality. Because when American families are sitting in the dark in California while they're being browned out every day, which is exactly what's going to happen, they will change their political orientation.
Yeah, but
but even if Biden's, I'm sorry.
Well, we're going to need an Operation Warp Speed and then some. It takes a minute to bring a nuclear power plant online. Even these.
Yes, it does.
You know, so sitting in the dark for a generation doesn't sound too attractive.
Semiconductor fab. You can build a nuclear power plant faster than you can build a semiconductor fab. How about that?
Yeah, but how long are we talking?
Years, many years.
Yeah, but if Biden's still in office, he'll be like, oh, so sad, too bad.
You know what? These guys are so far over their skis, Amy, in so many areas. I'm not worried about it. The Democrats are going to crash and burn. And you see this in New York. Some of the big developers are already predicting that landlords are going to just start burning down buildings again, the way they did in the 70s. And I think we're almost there because the unreasonable left in New York that controls Albany they still think they can legislate economic outcomes and that they can legislate inflation, for example. And no, it doesn't work. And you see this in the budget numbers coming out of New York City. You just wait. Even if we get rid of Biden, whoever's in the White House, hopefully it'll be Trump, is going to face a big problem financially, huge. The Treasury, the cities, we've got a long list of things that we're going to have to spend time on, and all internal. America, one way or another, is going to turn inward because we're not going to have any choice. That's how much stuff we've got to deal with. And electricity, yeah, absolutely.
Well,
the power grid that we rely on today was built 50 years ago, Amy, by smart people. We haven't had smart people in a while. So.
Well, it's it's the problem is you have the left's agenda, and you have to sort of get back to first principles, which is, I don't know, family, faith, and property, because they're all under assault by the left. And with respect to property, even some of those socialists in Albany you were speaking of recognize that because they're signing on to legislation to rein in this squatter problem. I mean, talk about sort of the manifestations of end times. This squatter problem that actually has become more than a one-off issue in New York City.
Well, of course. They have attacked it by defining residency and excluding squatters, okay? But still, you've got to enforce it. And in New York City, police, evicting squatters, it's going to look like Operation Move in Philadelphia. Remember that one? I think that it's good to hear people talking about this, but we're still in fantasy land on real estate. They're talking about allowing landlords to recover $50,000 in renovation costs when it costs the city of New York over $300,000 to renovate public housing per apartment. They have public sector unions doing 100% lead and asbestos remediation when they don't have to. You don't disturb it. You leave it alone, right? No. So, as long as we can still pretend that this works financially, then we will. But I don't think they'll build those windmills in New York. I don't think they'll have the money.
Well, right. Some of those projects, it was announced last week that they're non-starters, right? Despite the subsidies.
It was even the upfront subsidies don't deal with the real issue, which is once the thing is operated for a few years, you have to maintain it. You may have to take the damn turbine down off of the post. That's not a trivial thing. You think clear in Baltimore Harbor with those cranes trying to get that bridge out of the way is a big deal. Taking one of these turbines off of the post is a big deal. It's very dangerous, too. So I think there's other ways we can make power, and it's called nuclear, Dan.
Yeah.
You want to buy some stock, do your research, go buy companies that enable nuclear power, because that's the future. The only way we're going to do it.
What's your crystal ball tell you about things economic between now and November, as we are apparently, according to the numbers, in a stagflationary period in America?
Thank you. I am happy to hear you say that. It's a qualitative recession. In other words, the numbers are still okay. The inflation numbers are going back up slowly. But, ask everybody if the cereal box is bigger or smaller this year versus last year. It's clearly smaller, right? It's like that wonderful Pirsig book, Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. It's about quality. So everybody knows that we're getting nibbled here and there in qualitative terms. Everybody's working harder for less. And that's the legacy of Joe Biden. If we can get the Trumpster out of the courtroom, I think he'll mop the floor with him. Because people aren't excited about another 4 years of Joe Biden. Quite the opposite. Especially here in New York. There's absolute apathy regarding all of these leaders. And if a Republican would show up who can actually make an argument and stand up in public, I think you could win this state. New York is a disaster. And I think that we just don't attack it properly. I'm tempted, as I've told you before. But I have some work to do this year. I have a couple of bank indexes I have to stand up.
Well, I think that's Steamfitter who was asked if he had a message for Joe Biden, and he said, "Yeah, F you." I think he's communicating something very visceral in the direction of D.C.
You know what he did the other day? He went to have dinner at Michael Douglas's house.
Yeah.
With the lovely wife, and they
Catherine
closed the
Zeta-Jones.
schools in Irvington for 2 days
What?
to accommodate this gentleman's egress and ingress. I couldn't believe it. I mean, these are oligarchs. And yet Joe Biden will lecture us about democracy? Oh, my God. I love those pictures of him with the sunglasses, That's the perfect image of the Democratic left, authoritarian and smiling. We will help you. See, I hope that Joe does a faceplant so we could have President Kamala. That'll be the end of the Democratic Party. You get a month of her on television.
Oh, boy. I couldn't stomach
Oh,
that.
yeah.
I don't know.
I don't want to stomach that.
That laugh, it's very
The
infectious.
undead. Come on. She's
The
a
undead.
trial lawyer.
Yeah.
You know how she got there. We don't have to go through the history of
No.
it.
No, I even know how she got there.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know how. Look, I wrote a piece for American Conservative about her. People forget it was a national mortgage settlement and the billions of dollars she took home when she was Attorney General in California. That's why we know about Kamala. Otherwise, we never would have heard of her.
Well, and I mean, it's not like she was the brainchild behind that. Like the real trial lawyers and the attorney generals are the window dressing.
Oh, no, there was a gal from Texas who drove that bus. That was the Bank America settlement. But the point is she was there for California.
Yeah, right.
And they have a big slice of the mortgage market, and that's why she got such a big slice. A big slice. And she controlled all those funds, guys. She was more important than the governor. We don't even remember who that was.
Christopher Whalen, investment banker, chairman of Whalen Global Advisors, author of Fordman.
It could only get better, guys.
Fordman, From Inspiration to Enterprise, and Eternal Optimist. Christopher Whalen, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Have a great week.
You too, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Hi, this is Pastor Calvin from Christian Liberty Academy in Arlington Heights. It is time to get your children and grandchildren out of the godless government schools. How can we subject our loved ones to forced, ungodly psychological examinations and perverse sexual teachings? You would not send your child to a school that teaches 2 + 2 is 5. What is being taught today is far worse and damaging to minds and hearts. We can help through our on-campus Christian school and homeschool program.